Sophie and Max had been together for 6 years. They met during their university days in Munich, and their connection was immediate and powerful. Their relationship was built on shared passions, travel, music, and a love for spontaneous adventures. From weekends spent hiking in the Bavarian Alps to late-night concerts in hidden jazz clubs, they were inseparable. But as the years passed, the weight of life's responsibilities began to press down on them. Max had started a demanding job at a tech company, often working late into the night. Sophie, pursuing her career in journalism, found herself traveling frequently, leaving Max alone for days, sometimes weeks. The distance between them grew, not just physically, but emotionally. Conversations became shorter, arguments more frequent, and the once vibrant connection they shared began to fade. One evening, after a particularly heated argument about their future, Sophie sat down on the edge of their bed, tears streaming down her face. "I just don't know if we're on the same path anymore, Max," she whispered, her voice trembling. Max, equally heartbroken, nodded slowly. "Maybe we've grown apart. Maybe we need time to figure out what we really want." And just like that, they decided to part ways. It was a mutual decision, but the pain was no less intense. Sophie moved out of their shared apartment, taking with her the memories of what once was. They went their separate ways, trying to heal from the wounds that their breakup had left behind. In the months that followed, both Sophie and Max struggled with their new lives. Sophie buried herself in work, taking on more assignments and traveling even more frequently. She visited new cities, met interesting people, and tried to distract herself from the ache in her heart. But every night, as she lay alone in her hotel room, she couldn't help but think of Max. Max, on the other hand, threw himself into his job. He climbed the corporate ladder quickly, but each success felt hollow. He missed Sophie's laughter, the way she would light up a room, the way she understood him like no one else did. He tried dating, but no one compared to Sophie. The emptiness lingered, and he began to realize that despite their differences, he had never stopped loving her. Sophie's travels eventually led her to a small town on the coast of Italy. It was here, in the quiet and beauty of the Mediterranean, that she finally allowed herself to reflect on what had happened. One evening, sitting on a cliff overlooking the sea, she pulled out her journal and began to write. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she poured her heart onto the pages, realizing that she still loved Max deeply. She missed him, not just the good times, but even the challenges they faced together. The next day, with a heart full of hope, Sophie booked a flight back to Munich. Part 3. The Reunion. Max was at his favorite coffee shop, the one he and Sophie used to frequent, when he saw her. She stood in the doorway, her hair slightly tousled from the wind, her eyes searching the room until they landed on him. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Sophie?" Max's voice was barely a whisper, as if he couldn't quite believe she was there. She smiled, a mixture of nervousness and hope in her expression. "Hi, Max. Do you have a minute to talk?" They sat down at their old table, the one by the window where they used to spend hours talking about everything and nothing. For a few moments, they just looked at each other, taking in the changes that time apart had wrought. "I've missed you," Sophie finally said, her voice soft and sincere. "I thought about us a lot. I realized that I still love you, Max, and I think I was wrong to walk away." Max's heart swelled with emotion. He had imagined this moment so many times, but hearing her say the words felt like a dream. "I've missed you too, Sophie. I never stopped loving you. I thought about reaching out so many times, but I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me." They talked for hours, sharing their feelings, their regrets, and the lessons they had learned during their time apart. Sophie told Max about her travels and the emptiness she felt without him. Max shared how his success at work meant little without her by his side. As the afternoon turned into evening, they both realized something important. Their love for each other had never truly died. It had been tested, stretched, and almost broken, but it had endured. They agreed to take things slowly, to rebuild what they had lost, but they both knew that this time they were stronger. They had faced their fears, their insecurities, and their doubts, and had come out on the other side with a deeper understanding of what they wanted and needed from each other. Part 4. The New Beginning. Over the next few months, Sophie and Max began to rediscover each other. They took weekend trips, explored new places, and even revisited the spots that had been special to them in the past. They communicated more openly, sharing their thoughts and feelings in a way they hadn't before. The love they had once shared blossomed again, but this time it was more mature, grounded in the reality of who they were as individuals and as a couple. One evening, a year after they had reunited, Max took Sophie to the cliff overlooking the sea in Italy, where she had realized her love for him. As they stood there watching the sunset, Max turned to Sophie, holding her hand tightly. "This is where you found your way back to me," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And I want this to be the place where we start the next chapter of our lives." With that, he got down on one knee and pulled out a small velvet box. "Sophie, will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophie's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak. Max slipped the ring onto her finger and they embraced, both of them knowing that this time their love would last. Their journey hadn't been easy, but it had brought them to a place of deep, unshakable love. They had faced the challenges of life and had come through them stronger, more in love, and more committed to each other than ever before. And as they stood on that cliff, hand in hand, they knew that they were ready for whatever the future held, together.